Hello, today we are going to focus on how campaigns are financed. And looking at various strategies, I want to briefly talk about strategies and then we'll get into the financing behind those strategies. But you have a campaign manager who's going to be responsible for the overall strategy. A party official may help at the state and local level, but typically strategies at the federal level, in terms of winning the presidency, are guided around receiving 270 of the 538 electoral votes. And they'll focus on swing states. In the last election, those would have been Ohio, Virginia, Florida, Nevada, Colorado, Wisconsin, and Iowa. Campaigns will use propaganda and advertising. They'll advertise to try to inform voters and make candidates seem appealing, as well as to criticize opponents. They'll also use propaganda within those advertisements. So you might see candidates bashing other candidates, or might see they'll try to make a candidate seem appealing by connecting them to certain individuals' lifestyles. Television is a main form of advertisement. It's where most voters get their information. You have a couple different ads. You have issue ads that focus on various issues, like vote on issue 2. It'll help your schools and end crime. I don't know. That was a bad example, but oh well. Negative ads will then bash the other candidate. And in 2002, there was the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, where on those ads, those negative ads, candidates have to place their names on them. So if you see an ad that in the last election that was either for Donald Trump, it might if it was a negative ad, it might bash Hillary Clinton, and then at the bottom it says, or at the very end it says, "This message is approved by Donald Trump." That would be an example of the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act. Okay. The internet and social media has led to a significant increase in the amount of money that can be raised. So in 2008, President Obama raised $700 million through the internet and social media because donating was significantly easier. It's a cost-effective way that can spread information like wildfire. Now, getting into the actual financing of campaigns. In the last election, $2.4 billion was spent on just the presidential election. And looking at the presidential and congressional elections, $6.5 billion was spent total. And efforts have been made in the past to regulate campaign financing because they believe that unlimited spending favors the wealthy and will eventually lead to corruption or leads to corruption. And opponents believe money contributes to a broader political debate. So you have two conflicting views in terms of how or if campaigns should be financed or not. Some argue that giving money is a form of speech and therefore it is protected by the First Amendment. So I don't really know how strong that argument is, but nonetheless, that is one of their arguments. So in looking at regulating campaign financing, in 1908, Congress has tried to set limits in order to reduce corruption. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of restricting how much can be donated, as well as making donors' names public. The Supreme Court has also struck down limitations on candidate spending. So organizations that are unaffiliated with specific campaigns can spend a lot of money. And that's one of the reasons why Donald Trump was so successful in the last election, was because he had a ton of money already. He did not need support for raising campaign funds. The Federal Election Campaign Act, or FECA, states that candidates that qualify can receive campaign funds from the federal government. However, they must promise to limit the amount they spend to a specific amount. The reason they did this is because they wanted to reduce the influence of large donors. And every candidate is going to do this from 1976 to 2004. Okay. In 2008, Obama refused this, and he's going to end up spending twice as much as McCain because of the social media influence and being able to raise more money. In looking at different types of funding, we have direct funding, which comes from individuals, political parties, corporations, and special interest groups. Direct contributions are called hard money, and they're limited based on regulations set in FECA. For example, in 2013, you can see that individuals were limited to donating $2,600. National or local party committees were limited to $5,000, and political action committees or PACs were limited to $2,600. Indirect funding is a little bit different. Contributions to issue groups and political organizations that are independent from the campaign. So this is money raised to organizations that are not directly tied to the campaign. The Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act banned what is called soft money, or money that is raised by a political party for purposes, for general purposes, money not designated for a candidate. So it prohibited PACs, unions, and corporations from running issue ads that supported or denounced a national candidate within 30 days of a primary election or 60 days of a general election. So this Reform Act not only banned money that was just kind of put into a general fund, but it also prohibited corporations from running these issue ads that supported or denounced a candidate within 30 or 60 days of the election. In a 2010 Supreme Court decision, Citizens United versus FEC, the Supreme Court decided to strike down advertising limits. And they said that PACs that are not connected with campaigns can receive unlimited donations. And the PACs that end up taking advantage of this are called super PACs. And they're supposed to be independent, but they're often run by the allies of a candidate. Any PAC who ends up spending more than $5,000 during a year or campaign year must report donors who give over $100. So with this Supreme Court decision, these super PACs have evolved, and they've really kind of increased campaign spending dramatically.